Ain't no doubt about it. 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 Ain't no doubt about it.
My name is Tiffany Dina Lofton, and I'm a senior advisor with the Grassroots Law Project. Tonight, we're announcing our next big project and premiering a documentary that our team has been working on for months. Over the last week, we've posed a very important question online. What is a Black man's life worth? We've also been asking supporters like you, what would you do to save that man's life? Tonight, I want to introduce you to Marvin Lewis Guy, a man unjustly incarcerated in Bell County Jail because of a no-knock raid in Killeen, Texas. To help me tell this story, I want to introduce you to the Texas Campaigns Director for Grassroots Law Project, PJ Martinez.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for being here, and thank you to Tiffany for that introduction. On May 9th, 2014, before the Black Lives Matter movement would take off in full force, before the murder of Eric Garner, Ferguson, and 6 years before we would all chant Breonna Taylor's name, police in Killeen, Texas performed a disastrous, reckless, and racist no-knock ban on the home of Marvin Guy. When police came crashing through Marvin Guy's window, he reached for his gun and fired. Killeen police returned fire with Marvin and his then-girlfriend Shirley in the apartment. In a few minutes, we're going to premiere a documentary about what's happened to Marvin and the tragic raid in which 3 officers were injured and Detective Charles Dinwiddie lost his life. Police conducted the raid based on incorrect testimony that Marvin had drugs in his home. When they searched the house after the raid, they found no drugs. To repeat, absolutely no drugs were found in his house. But Marvin's innocence of drug possession is besides the point. Detective Dinwiddie would be here today if police had not conducted that no-knock raid. Marvin has been in Bell County Jail for 7 years and counting for the murder of Detective Charles Dinwiddie. He's not been convicted. The Bell County District Attorney Henry Garza has said he will seek the death penalty, but won't give Marvin his day in court. This isn't justice, and it's a top-down indictment of law enforcement in Bell County. Grassroots Law Project is raising money for Marvin's legal fund. You can donate to that fund at freemarvinguy.com. Additionally, we need you to volunteer. While we're working to be ready for trial, our goal is to get Marvin out of Bell County Jail and home with his family. Please stick around to the end of the documentary where our team will talk to you about what you can do best to help him.
Our goal is to get Marvin home. Whether that means a grassroots funded effort to win in trial or a massive public pressure campaign to get the district attorney, Henry Garza, to drop the charges, I know that we can win. Why? Because we've done it before. After the murder of George Floyd, the grassroots law community sent 3 million petition messages and made 640,000 phone calls to county and state officials, pressuring them to hold police accountable. Our political arm helped elect 27 compassionate state and local leaders to reimagine public safety across the country. This happened in cities like Los Angeles, where I'm sitting now, Chattanooga, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, San Antonio, and Harrisburg. Additionally, we dealt a major blow to the Fraternal Order of Police in Philadelphia by helping elect Larry Krasner to remain the Democratic nominee for district attorney. Further, volunteers in Texas made over 1,500 calls to the state legislature to fight for good bills like the Botham Jean Act, and again, bad bills that would help keep more folks locked up. These victories were only possible because so many activists and organizers like you donated your time and efforts to fund campaigns, making calls, knocking on doors, and signing petitions.
That's exactly right, Tiffany. Additionally, this isn't the first time we've mobilized volunteer power in Killeen. Earlier this year, we were approached by local activist Jamaica Reed. Her brother, James Scott Reed, was killed by Killeen police in a different no-knock raid in February of 2019. After that tragedy, Jamaica worked tirelessly to collect signatures to put a no-knock ban on the ballot. But when we had the opportunity to pass a no-knock ban ordinance in Killeen at the city council level, Grassroots Law Project volunteers made over 200 calls to that city council, and we collected almost 3,000 petition signatures imploring them to pass a no-knock ban. That ban passed on a 6-1 vote. We're really grateful to everyone who made calls, and we're going to ask you to do that again. That's why we've launched freemarvinguide.com to share Marvin's story and give you next steps to ensure that we can bring Marvin home.
Thanks, PJ. Now, before we start the movie, I'm asking every one of you to stick around after the film for an important discussion and to hear our action steps. We have to do this together. Later in the broadcast, you're going to see a number on the screen to call that will connect you to the important targets, particularly the DA, Henry Garza. We are demanding that he drop all of the charges against Marvin. Also, we're going to be answering your questions from the chat with the filmmaker, Cassius Michael Kim, and we have a special interview with Marvin's brother, Garrett Galloway. This documentary was the result of a lot of hard work, and we're proud to premiere it tonight. But we're especially proud to stand with Marvin and his family for justice. Don't forget, you can go to freemarvinguide.com to learn more. We have two ways for you to help us help Marvin right now. First, if you go to freemarvinguide.com, you can donate to Marvin's legal fund. That money goes directly to the fund the attorneys have to prepare to go to trial. Second, you can visit freemarvinguide.com. You'll see the number right now on the screen. That number is 254-500-2180. When you call, you'll receive instructions from Marvin's brother, Garrett Galloway, who we'll speak to in a little bit. And you'll be connected to targeted officials, including the district attorney, Henry Garza, one after the other. Each of these targets could influence whether district attorney Henry Garza drops the charges. Remember, when you call, you're asking for the DA, Henry Garza, to drop the charges. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Marvin Guy's brother, Garrett Galloway. Garrett, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your leadership. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your brother and telling us about him, since we don't know him?
Okay, well, I'd like to start all the way back, just to give everybody a little insight, because I know you see my name is Garrett Galloway, his name is Marvin Guy. We're from Indiana, but the reason we have a different last name, we have different fathers. And, my family, we grew up in Gary, Indiana. But back in 1974, like I said in the documentary, my mother, she had a heart attack. And she passed away 10 days after having my sister. So our family broke up. By no means, we had the best life growing up or nothing like that. We were poor. But we tried to stay together. It was just really good when Marvin moved here to Texas back in 2013. Started to try to turn his life around. He'd been in and out of trouble. He started to turn his life around. He met a young lady named Shirley. They were dating. And they're the happiest I've ever seen. He was so happy, and they used to do everything together. He dressed alike. And he was doing things that was positive, and I was so proud of him. Then he went and got his own place, and he used to stay here with me. He got his own place on Circle M. He was still doing his own thing, trying to make his life better with this young lady, going to church every week. And then on May the 9th, that's when all this turned upside down. That's when the police busted in there, and things haven't been right since.
This is a scary story, and I want to ask you a little bit about the no-knock warrant in a second, Mr. Galloway. But can you tell us a little bit, for folks who don't know, like myself, what is Killeen, Texas like? You talked about the transition already, but talk to us a little bit about the climate and the people in that area.
Well, let me let you know. I used to be in the military. I was in the Army. I got stationed here back in 1998. So I think about 1997. Got stationed here. And, I liked it. It was a military community, about 57,000. Now Killeen has grown to a population of almost 200,000. which I had to do that by bringing my family along. The first person I had come was my brother Fred, and my other brother Sydney. And then later on, my sister Latoya came, and Marvin. So it was all starting to fall in place to where we was all starting to be in the same location. So I felt good about that because we hadn't been together 1974. But Killeen is a decent town. I like it. When I first got here, it felt like it was a little bit racist. They had an acronym for Killeen, which is still. Well, I'm not even gonna get into that.
I was ready. I thought you was going to tell us. Okay, go ahead.
It was kind of one of the things where it was racist in the past, but I believe that throughout the years, most people are starting to really, deal with racism. When George Floyd got killed, I think that kind of made people open their eyes, and more people are starting to get along. I think we've come a long way, but we've still got a long way to go.
I'm really sorry to hear about your loss, and I want to thank you for your service. My sister is also in the military. You talked a little about your experience moving there, the family coming together, how excited you all are for a new start, how important it was for y'all to be together. And then this happened. And what we've learned in the documentary is that there's a very similar case. And when we come back to interview you in the film, you make some comparisons between the two different types of no-knock warrants with McGee and your brother. And so how did that feel? I guess learning about that situation and then seeing the comparison of the difference, how did that make you feel?
Well, when you look at the Henry McGee case, you see something where it's done and over, where he had a speedy trial and he wasn't convicted. When a lot of the comparisons are similar, they busted in his house. It served a no-knock warrant. He started shooting. Officer ended up getting killed, but this guy did not get charged. The only difference, my brother's black and he's white. So, you look through the lens of justice and you say, well, why is this man free and my brother's not free?
That's right.
So it's kind of hard to know that they would let this man walk and not give him a hard time like they give my brother. Even when they post pictures, they post a picture of him with his daughter, nice loving picture of him and his daughter. And they post my brother's picture with a mugshot. And it's just crazy how they don't even give you the same courtesy and respect just because of your skin color.
That's right.
So, and he's been sitting there for 7 years. We haven't heard much from the district attorney. Haven't heard much from his past legal team. A lot of times Marvin was real skeptical about his legal team, and I at first I didn't understand why, but now I do. I feel like he was right. I feel like they was working hand in hand. And so, I just feel like those comparisons of those two cases are just huge. And for them to treat it totally different is just mind.
Yeah, I think that sometimes folks get upset when we talk about race, right, Mr. Galloway? I think that people, will try to say that we pull in the race card, and when we have clear examples of how folks are being treated differently, and then we're able to show a film or read in the paper the different types of treatments and how they vilify, right, Black and brown folks and your brother, and to your point about posting his mugshot and not being able to tell his full story, the injustice that happens there is always social and subliminal. But I also was really shocked when I learned about your brother's case to see that earlier back in April of this year, there was a pass on the no knock ban ordinance that happened, and we saw it in the film 6-1. That was a historic vote that happened in the area. I would have felt a little bit of rage, like, wait a minute, y'all just undid the no knock warrant, but my brother is still sitting in jail for the last 7 years, and y'all haven't even dealt with or given him a trial or a case, and he's still sitting in jail. And so I guess my question to you is, like, you were there when that happened. What did that feel like to have the historic pass that happened? And we want to count that as a victory because that's important. But I know that doesn't mean justice yet for your brother, Marvin Guy. So how did that make you feel when you were there?
Well, it made me feel good. With the new city council, the way that they interact with their community and their constituents, they voted the way they felt like their constituents. That's the information that they put out. They said, this is something that their constituents wanted. They're going to vote to remove it. And, I don't know what the previous council did in the past, but this council stepped up to the plate and took leadership to do what people want. That was to remove the no knock ban.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. That I want to credit some of that victory to you, of course, in this long campaign to get justice for your brother, for your family, and to make sure that we bring Marvin home safely. I think that is a huge victory that we should all be proud of. And thank you for your leadership in that. I think that this film is really important for us to get the word out about your brother. I want to now add two other folks to the conversation, if you don't mind. I want to bring back PJ, our director in Texas. And then I also want to introduce folks to Cassius Michael Kim, the film director. And so in a couple of seconds, we're going to come back and have a group discussion.
This is PJ with Grassroots Law Project. Again, I want to introduce you to Cassius Michael Kim. He's one of the filmmakers who worked on this film. We're really excited to have him here. I'm interested in asking you a few questions while we've got you, Cassius. The first one is, you're not from Killeen. You're not from Texas, right? What was it like being on the ground there? Was there a bit of a culture shock? Garrett talked a little bit about, about what it's like on the ground there and how when he first got there was a little racist. What do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily describe it as culture shock. I think, I've been into a lot of different parts of this country, and Killeen, I think, is a bit unique in that Fort Hood is so close to it. And there's definitely like a huge influence from that presence of the military. I mean, I don't think a lot of people understand just how large Fort Hood is. I certainly didn't know the size and scope of it. I think at any given time, there's approximately 40,000 soldiers there, and just the land it takes up next to Killeen. So Killeen itself isn't that big of a city, right? Like as Garrett mentioned, it's like 200,000 people or so. So I've been in cities of that size, but it just kind of surprised me more than anything to learn just how much police activity there were, just how many no-knock warrants have been conducted year by year up until this ban in a city that's really not that big. And just to see kind of the presence of the police in all aspects of daily life, I think that's what surprised me more.
Absolutely. You mentioned the ban, and you were there to film when the city council voted on the no-knock ban. Can you describe what it was like, what the scene was there?
Yeah, so, we initially started our principal photography the week prior to that city council meeting because it's a two-step process. They introduce the measure 1 week, and then they have a speaking period, and then the next week they vote on it. So we kind of use that as a bookend for our time in Killeen. And, it was a very organic kind of way of kind of measuring, I think, both community sentiment and seeing just how the dialogue that we saw 1 week would translate the next week when the vote happened. And I think we were all kind of surprised on the crew to see the 6-1 vote. I think we were expecting the ban to pass. I think the citizens made themselves heard, and the city council members were very responsive to it. Melissa Brown, who's in the film, was very forceful in terms of pushing for that ban. But yeah, I think that 6-1 ban, that number was definitely surprising. Including a couple votes who I thought were on the fence or maybe leaning the other way in that first week. To see them kind of listen to the city and listen to the citizens I think, as Garrett says in the film, it's what the citizens want, and we actually saw, democracy in action.
Absolutely. I was also very surprised to see it pass on a 6-1 vote. I was really grateful for the footage you got because when I was watching the vote, I saw it on like Zoom. The city council has like a live stream feed set up, and it's not very good. So it was really cool to see that perspective of the vote. While we're talking really briefly about like, weird mediums of communication and how, there's different perspectives, you couldn't actually talk to Marvin directly. You could only talk to him over the phone. You couldn't actually film him. What was that like? Can you describe the challenges a little bit?
As a filmmaker, I think there's definitely inherent challenges in having your primary subject be someone you can't film. I think Marvin and we were lucky enough to speak several times. He would call me, and I would try to deposit money when I could into his account. So he can just call me, but other people in his orbit. The whole system that they have set up to regulate communications for inmates, and then just to profit off that. I think that's a whole other conversation that people like Marvin are subject to. But I was just very grateful for the time I had to at least speak with him, and we conducted several interviews aside from just like private conversations to get to know each other and just learn more about his life and how best we could represent him, considering we weren't able to be allowed into the jail.
Thank you. The last question I'll ask you is like, before we go to some audience questions, and again, folks watching at home on Twitch, you can ask questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can throughout the little bit of time we have left. This film is really powerful, obviously. We're really grateful that, Garrett has such a powerful voice and makes the case so well. What is the significance that films like this have, do you think? And what do you hope the viewer takes away from it?
For this film specifically, I hope that we're able to just raise awareness about Marvin's case. As someone mentioned at the beginning of the stream, there's been a lot of awareness raising throughout this country about matters. But, I think Breonna Taylor was probably the first time a lot of people found out about no-knock warrants. But, Breonna Taylor's case didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in a period of over-militarization of police over the last couple decades. And no-knock warrants have been used unjustly for many years before that tragedy in Louisville. And I think Marvin's case is a prime example of that. And any awareness that we can bring to this situation and just the sheer unconstitutionality of keeping someone in jail without trial, give this man his day in court. I think that's something people across all political spectrums should be able to agree on. It's a basic human right we're given as American citizens to make sure we're represented and able to represent ourselves in a court of law. And Marvin's been denied that for 7 years. And, once we lose these kinds of basic freedoms, what's the next step? So my hope for this is just, I want more people to know who Marvin Gaye is and what this case represents. And I'm very excited to see the next steps and how this progresses in the days coming.
Thank you. I think that's actually a really good answer to the first question we have here. Someone asked in the chat, can't they use ballistics analysis to prove Marvin didn't do it? I think what we're fighting for here and why we're asking people to donate to his legal fund is so that that case can be made in court. The question of whether or not it was Marvin's gun that shot the round that killed Detective Charles Dinwiddie hasn't been answered. Melissa Brown made that super clear, I think, at the beginning of the documentary. I don't want to get into too much legal analysis because I don't think any of us are qualified or comfortable making this, doing that kind of analysis. But I think Castro said it best here. Give this man his day in court. We have another question here in the chat, I see. Are there any plans for an internal investigation of KPD by an outside agency? I don't really have an answer to that question. I know that our goal is to, we've worked on funding a world-class legal team to get, to win in a trial should we get there, but we also want Henry Garza to drop the charges. Garrett, if it doesn't if it doesn't go into too much revealing things you're not comfortable, have you heard anything about that?
No, not at all. Not at all. I really haven't heard much from the legal team on that, and I'm sure they don't want anything to leak. Fortunate case But no, I haven't. I really haven't.
Gotcha.
But I mentioned something to someone. I was looking at my phone, and one day I pulled up in front of a paper machine, and I pulled a newspaper, and it says the court documents show that the shot that killed Dinwiddie would come from Guy's gun. And I don't know where they got that information, but that was in the newspaper back in 2016 when they put that in there. But I've never heard anything from the attorneys about ballistics coming back from this stuff.
Gotcha. Thank you, Garrett. We got another question from producer VX in the chat. How can we help beyond just making calls to the district attorney? That's a really good question. You can go to freemarvinguide.com. We launched that website today, and we're really excited to do it. On that website, you can, yes, make calls to Henry Garza and other targeted officials, but you can also donate to Marvin's legal fund. That legal fund goes directly to helping fund Marvin's representation as we get ready for going to court. Additionally, when you go to freemarvinguide.com, you'll be able to rewatch the documentary that we just aired. It's 20 minutes long, and it's very, very powerful. So make sure you share it with friends, family members, and spread the word. That part of this is raising awareness, but also the other part, the most important part, is taking action. We have a question from Godzillary. This is a question for Cassius. What was the most surprising thing you learned as you were working on the film?
Well, I think there's a number of things that surprised me, and without getting into too many details, I think it was just a sheer number of people who were scared to talk to us because I think partly due to the militarization of the town, as well as the very heavy police presence, fairly or not, I think people were worried about what speaking to documentary filmmakers about this case that's been buried for so long would do for their day-to-day prospects living in Killeen. So, just that atmosphere of fear from average citizens, I think that was something I was surprised to find. I was speaking to someone who I wanted to get on camera to speak on behalf of Officer Dinwiddie, who I think is also just another part of this tragedy. And they were, at the last minute, they just would not agree to speak to us. And also, I just want to get back to a couple of the questions that have been asked earlier regarding an external investigation to KPD. That was an initiative that was first mobilized under the Obama administration by the DOJ. That was put on hold under Trump.
Yeah, I think we lost Cassius. While we worked to get him back, I think he made clear that there isn't a current investigation, that it was halted by the Trump administration. There are a couple of things that I want to talk about before we wrap up really quickly. The first is that when we worked on No Knocks, we especially helping Bandit and Killeen, we learned that 80% of them are for low-level drug offenses, in this instance, just like Marvin's case, and they primarily target communities of color. Though that is made clear, I think, in Killeen, I think that the sentiment of the population was that this is happening primarily to people of color. Additionally, we learned that most people are aware that no knocks are unhelpful, that no knock bans are necessary because they put everyone in danger, not just the person that the raid is conducted on. So when you go to freemarvinguide.com, just remember when you talk to people, particularly people who are targets that we want you to convince to drop the charges against Marvin, if someone tries to defend no knock ban, just make sure you go in armed with facts, particularly ones about who they target and the efficacy of them. Do we have any more questions? I don't see any more. So I think that we're going to wrap up really soon. I want to thank everyone for coming. We've set up two ways, again, for you to help Marvin. First, go to freemarvinguide.com, and you can donate to Marvin's legal fund. That money goes directly to the attorneys as they prepare to fight in trial. Second, at freemarvinguide.com, you'll see a number to call. That number is 254-500-2180. When you call, you'll receive instructions from Marvin's brother, Garrett Galloway, and you'll be connected to targeted officials, including DA Henry Garza, one after the other. Remember to be polite, but be firm. each of these targets could influence whether or not District Attorney Henry Garza drops the charges. So when you call, we're asking Henry Garza to drop the charges. Again, my name's PJ. I want to thank Garrett Galloway. I want to thank Cassius Kim, and I want to thank Tiffany Dina Lofton for joining us today. Have a good night, everyone.